In Puerto Rico, there was huge protest on Tuesday. I don't know if you heard about it. It was May Day over there, but it was also International Workers' Day. And thousands of people took to the streets in a protest. They were protesting um, in San Juan, in the capital, protesting some new austerity measures that they're trying to put into place in Puerto Rico. So what they're trying to do is now all of a sudden the government's trying to fix the budget, the deficit problem in Puerto Rico. But instead of cutting back on big businesses or taxing big businesses, they're taking away from the people. And so that's why this protest happened. And unfortunately, of course, the protesters were met with violence. So what happens in this country when you try to peacefully protest? It's not even peacefully protest. You know, we can call it protest. That's a word. It's a word that gets thrown around, but it's people, retirees, college students, mothers, fathers, going out into the street and trying to have their voices heard, trying to fight a government that's trying to take away from them and oppress them and hurt their families. So you can call them protesters, or you could just call them citizens who went out into the street and or are trying to fight for themselves and their families. What happens in this country when citizens try to do that, when citizens try to have their voices be heard? Many times they are met with tear gas and rubber bullets. And that happened, of course, at Standing Rock. And that happened again here in Puerto Rico the other day. So it was International Workers' Day. A dozen organizations, including activist groups and workers' unions, rallied at Puerto Rico's financial district to protest the new austerity measures proposed by a federally appointed fiscal control board. So this fiscal control board is in charge of trying to relieve Puerto Rico of its debt, you know, because Trump said all this about how Puerto Rico is costing the United States money, right? So, hey, let's cut all this funding to students, to the people. So this is last month, a federally appointed oversight board. This is the plan, approved a plan to restructure the island's $72 billion public debt. It included the Federal Oversight Board called for the implementation of 10% pension cuts, eliminating mandatory Christmas bonuses, reducing required vacation and sick time, allowing businesses to fire employees without having to prove a just cause, closing public schools, and increasing the university tuition. So this is why thousands of people took to the street in San Juan on Tuesday, because this is where they're trying to cut, to make up for their public debt. They're trying to make cuts that affect the people instead of the corporations. No one's touching the corporations. The board also called for the privatization of PREPA, one of the largest publicly owned power providers in the United States. And this is at a time when 30,000 people still do not have power in Puerto Rico. 30,000 people still do not have power in Puerto Rico 8 months after Hurricane Maria. So the march was huge. It covered almost in one area 1,000 foot bridge, the Dos Hermanos bridge, was just covered with people. That's 1,000 feet of people lined up on this bridge, all converging to the building where the Federal Oversight Board had its offices. So, and then when they got close, they were fired on with tear gas. So this is some stats. 280 public schools in Puerto Rico are scheduled to be closed. On top of it, teachers are losing jobs. And on top of that, there are tuition increases in universities. So here you have this woman, and she's a teacher. She's being interviewed. She says, I'm worried because I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job this summer. And on top of it, tuition is going up, and we will not be able to afford to continue our son's education. That's the situation for one woman. That's how they're making up for their debt, by taking away from her, her son, and her family. So yes, I would be out on the streets as well. Retirees will lose their pension. Employees will see money from their medical plans taken away. So the Fiscal Control Board is the result of a law approved in 2016 by the Congress that imposes a federally appointed board known as the Fiscal Oversight and Management Board to oversee the island's finances. According to the ACLU, the chapter in Puerto Rico, police officers disproportionately used violence against demonstrators, reporters, and legal observers, followed by warrantless arrest of protests in their homes and in their university dorms. So after the protest, these officers continued to search out people that were there. And this was a non-violent protest. They did not have weapons. At most, at one point, a group of protesters just had these little wooden shields, like little wooden shields that they made that they were holding. And then they started to get beat with the batons, hit with tear gas, shot with rubber bullets. So on top of what happened there, they continued to search out the people in their dorm rooms and homes to arrest them. Among the marchers were college students, teachers, retirees, union workers, and some government officials, such as San Juan Mayor Carmen Cruz. She's incredible. So what happened was, and I don't know if you saw, it just reminded me of when Jordan got arrested, the protesters, I hate calling them protesters, they're protesters, but the citizens, the elderly, the retirees, the students, the parents, they all got to the financial district, and that's where they were stopped by the officers, and they tried to communicate with the officers, and there was footage taken of this. They were trying to communicate with the officers. They were being very peaceful, very nonviolent. They were saying, we're not here to be violent. We don't want any violence. Do you want us to leave the financial district? Just let us get through then. The police were blocking them. Just let us get through and we will leave. And the one man, one of the leaders was on his megaphone, and he was saying, I don't want to be here. No one wants to be here, but we're put in this situation because of your actions, and we want to negotiate. So please allow us to negotiate. We're not here for violence. And he's on his megaphone telling this to the officers who are there in their riot gear. And at one point, the officer said, okay, we'll let you through. They told one of the leaders, we're going to let you through. But they didn't. So they started tear gassing them. But what happened was, and this is why I was thinking about when Jordan was arrested, was they then surrounded the police officers in their riot gear, then surrounded the civilians, surrounded the students, surrounded the elderly people, surrounded the teachers, the mothers, the fathers. They couldn't get out at that point. And they continued to gas them. And some were shot with rubber bullets. And there was another girl she was a college student. She had ran away. She said she couldn't breathe. She had very bad asthma. She turned back to get her friend who she was there with, but she couldn't because her friend was inside this circle of officers. She could not get to her. Her friend could not get out, and they were just bombing. They were just tear gassing these people. So yeah, it got really unnecessarily violent, and for something that they literally repeatedly said, we are here to negotiate. We just want to negotiate. Please let us through and let us speak and let's negotiate a better way to handle this debt than take it away from the people. So here's just a few quotes. Jocelyn, I'm so bad at names, apologize, Velasquez from the Collective Promises Are Over said, "We are demanding the repeal of the Promesa Act. We demand eliminating the fiscal control board. We demand the creation of a democratic and participatory process to audit the debt. Where we know in what the money was wasted and how it was wasted. And from there, begin to find a system that identifies what part of the debt is legal and what part is illegal." I would love to interview her. "Then the debt that is illegal needs to be removed so that we can identify a plan to reconstruct the country and regain our economy." So here she's literally has a well thought out plan. She just wants to negotiate, and she doesn't want these things being taken away from the people when it was corruption that, she's saying got them in debt to begin with. Event organizer Scott Barbase said, "Here the people have behaved very calmly and the situation is very controlled. But the plan to fulfill our objective is overdue and they have no right. Any situation of violence that emerges will be because the police of Puerto Rico are putting obstacles to the march. Please respond to our calling to negotiate and allow the march to continue its path." Again, he's just calling to negotiate, and it just says again and again, we don't want violence. We just want you to hear us so we can negotiate something better. Another woman, Mariana, says, "My name is Mariana. The organizers want to communicate, but the police are not effectively communicating. What happened is that after giving an order, they looked like they were going to step down. They still remain there, and behind we can see officers from a special arrest unit. Eventually, she goes on to say, this is an intimidation. If they don't want us in the financial district, well, just let us through so we can exit. Nobody wants to be in the financial district today. We don't want to have to be here fighting for our future. We don't have any other option. We have children, parents, mothers, grandparents, grandmothers. What option do we have? They don't give us an option, and we end up having to have a confrontation between Puerto Ricans." So that happened on Tuesday. Like I said, 30,000 people in Puerto Rico still don't have electricity. So on top of it, now they're having pensions, healthcare, schools being closed, tuition's going up. They're taking a shot at the people on every single level, past, future, present. Let's make sure we don't get these people in education. Let's make sure that our elderly people no longer have a pension plan. Let's make sure no one has medical assistance. Like, if we can't think of better ways to fix budgets in the United States, but politicians can, they can. It's always because politicians are paid by big corporations. So as Bernie Sanders says, tax the upper 1%. Tax the upper 1%. This is my opinion. I believe you're free to your own opinion. But Jesus, it's fairly simple, isn't it? How about make those billionaires pay taxes? I did a report the other day on how much Sheldon Adelson saved in taxes last year, and then how much of that bounced back to the Republican Party. He saved billions. He gave, I don't know, I can't even remember the number now, hundreds of thousands back to the Republican Party, back to Trump. It just stays at the top.